it. Last week in the webinar we covered the float and how, while we talk about in the float, there are several things in the float that, but the most important is to slow the club down, allow the club to collect, and it does. I know Mike's on here tonight, but there's several on here. But you know, everybody's probably heard me if you worked in the live lessons about getting your club to stop completely at the top. And if you look at like the law of the pendulum, so if you look that up, just Google search it, however you want to do it, you'll see like an illustration of how it's designed. So it's like a ball and chain theory. So when the ball goes up, there's a pause and delay, and that creates potential energy. As it starts down, then it starts to use mass and momentum, and then that in turn creates kinetic energy. Simply put, in golf swing, it's simpler than all that, and obviously it can be more complicated than all that because it is a human body. But the club would do the same thing. So the club, as it goes to the top, would create, I'll play Dustin here. Sometimes the problem is you see it at such a fast speed that you don't see that there is a delay in transition, but it's the slowest part of the golf swing is transition. So the takeaways, when you measure this, biomechanics, every study will tell you, even the different measurement tools, they all tell you that the slowest part of the golf swing is transition. And the most efficient part of the golf swing, as it slows down in transition, you certainly still screw up. But this part right here is still very slow. So as it enters transition, it gets slow. It slows down to a halt, and then as it's moving away on the downswing towards the golf ball and away, it's getting slower. It's staying slow, and then all of a sudden, from about right in here, there's no exact. Every player starts to try to create mass and momentum differently in different areas, but the club from here would just start to move away and create its speed. So this webinar is going to be about the lead arm and shaft as you enter the timing contact point, what you do after that, how you get it into the grip alignment point. And again, these are just labels, as I've talked about before. It's formless. But I say that being if you're a good player and doing it, and it's got to be just a part of your swing and natural. But as most people see, even some of the pros that can't keep it, that cannot keep the get to the grip alignment point and further through. And so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and bring it into to the timing contact point here. And so that for him is his timing contact point, which obviously is really nice. But this is where players really struggle. And when you're working on wedge play, obviously this is where you really want to work on that at. But as he exits, he's hit the grip alignment point, and then now right here is what I'm talking about tonight. And we call it, that would be timing. Would be the component number 6. So out of the 7 timing components, this would be number 6, sustain. And as you can see here, what I'm looking at, and I have a video on that, where the lead arm is on the inside, or the shaft is on the inside portion of the arm. So if this was held off, it would be anything outside on that part of the wrist or there, which is not normal. And then for an amateur, it would look, obviously it would look backwards. The club would be here at that point, and the club would be flipping this way. And I think everybody pretty much that's ever videoed their swing certainly have seen that before. But this is the most efficient. So as we're skipping kind of the containment part tonight, that part coming in, but we'll go over that maybe next week or the week after, how to contain it better and do things like that. But you really want everybody to focus on this tonight, and for the next 2 weeks is trying to get in, as you when you refer to the website, go to the decel, and you'll see that this is what we're trying to, from a position standpoint, that's really what we're trying to go after. It should be very relaxed, and I'm telling you, he's really relaxed here. There's a lot of force and there's a lot of power there, but he's very relaxed at we consider that position. And so, and as it changes, that even here to that point, it's amazing. He's still pretty close to having that on the inside part of the arm. The club's is lifterous, is rotating and all that stuff, but keeps kept that alignment with the left arm. It'll start breaking later and all that, but as you've hit the timing contact point, it's really like about 3 feet, and it's different for every player. If you've got the timing contact point, you can flip it a little bit, and certainly, I mean, Fred Couples passes it. There's other players that pass it a little bit. When I say pass it, the club's breaking. It would be not in alignment here. It would be kind of broken. If I draw a line, it would look, their club might look more, oops, try that again, here to kind of there, kind of broken. The shafts, the club head would be working more up, but they still had that timing contact point. Whereas his club head, if the weight's still down in the head here, and that's very important. And it's not. And one of the things you want to do when you're watching your training, you don't want to hold it off. It's where guys get in problems. They try to just drag the handle that way, and then try to create this real big long line out here, and that's not what you're wanting to do either. You really want to be precise after when you make contact to get this part correct. That being said, you don't want to, let me just do this real quick. So what you don't want to do is let body parts come out here. So you don't, what he doesn't do here, which is really good, is let the right arm roll out. He's not letting the shoulder roll out. It just, everything's moving forward here. So he's using mass to go that way. Oops, didn't show up really well there. Try that again. So his mass is going this way, and of course he's got the circle working as well. So, but that's not stuff you think about. I mean, that's just happened from the transition, and you know, as you're doing the containment part of the downswing, when the circle's kind of pulling you around to the left, but really he's just moving his mass forward here as well. So if you just spun here, it'd be a whole different look. His hip would be behind his knee. It would be more like a reverse pivot, and we probably wouldn't be talking about him right now. So where amateurs would do this is several problems. One, they know that this alignment, they flip that. No matter what your body alignments are here, regardless of what they are, I want you to get a really good relationship with the inside part of the arm to the club face, and that should all be square. So as you hit the ball, you maintain that. And if you have body alignment issues where you can see his weight's moved up forward and all this stuff, there's some rotation. If your body's back here, if your right hip's back here, you haven't moved up to your left, just start working on that, but make sure that whatever you do, you don't give this part up, no matter what you do, because that's going to be your relationship. And it doesn't mean if you have this that you're going to hit good shots. You may video this and you're going, look, I have this in alignment. All I can tell you is if you're consistently doing this and it's in alignment, more good things are going to happen to you in the future of golf than bad things will happen. Doesn't mean you'll play good exactly that day. I would never say that. But I will tell you more good things will happen because you can build off of that. What you have to pay attention to is you can still, to get here, because it's just a position, it could have been forced, so somebody could be really forcing the energy, from here and punching at it, which would cause problems, premature acceleration, and still, but it's forcefully holding, so that would create more tension in these arms. So if you have tension in the arms, the neck, or any of those body parts, that's going to cause problems. If you've rolled the muscles, which I see that sometimes guys will get this from the face on, but then you look down the line and they've rolled that shoulder, that elbow, and that knee, and that hip, everything, or one or the other became a very big move, and that caused problems. So those are the things. If you've got this down and this is getting grooved inside the arm, then the other things you can start to isolate as well. But you've got to get the whole goal of this program is timing, is getting a strong relationship with the club face, the sweet spot, and the timing contact point, grip alignment point, and sustain. And it's really based on that. And then you start to build things around that relationship of sweet spot, the ball, getting the ball flight correct and all that. Then you start to, feed what you need. Everybody's going to look a little different. Some people slide in front as they're doing this. Some people back up. Most people back up and twist, so the hips backing up and rolling. A lot of different ways, and you have to kind of go in there. If you're not in the live training program, you got to go in there and you use our videos on the website to help guide you. I mean, you'll see all the movements. It's covered. There's a lot of videos, and that's why it's, you know, it's impossible to do it, you know, in one day or a month or anything like that. You got to go study it, and you got to video yourself. I'm not afraid to tell people to video. Now, as everybody's heard me on here, most people have heard me talk about, I don't want you to be a lab rat. I just want you got to be able to use your eyes to see what's going on, so you can identify the problem, which we'll go into here in just a second. Then you've got to, you should, as soon as you, well, we'll just go into it now. I mean, this was part of the program I was talking about. So the first stage is of the decel. The big question I get every week is, why should we decel? I mean, I get that probably more than anything. The why factor of why we're doing all this stuff. And the bottom line is the decel, there's several stages to this, but the three main things that you need to know are, the first thing is, so it will help you identify the problem. So if you get to the backswing here, we'll start with the backswing, and we get you to decel and just come to a full pause. Then what that'll help you do is help you find what you're doing on the downswing. You'll start to feel it, much less see it, right? So so the decel is when we get here and radically change speeds, and again, it's just a drill where we go really slow. What'll happen is you'll start to feel like if your body is, you know, running out in front. So if you're moving, you know, if you're moving laterally too much, or if you're spinning, you know, this way too much, if you're flipping the club way too early, the deceleration is going to help you feel it. Now, when you talk about somebody's feeling awareness and sensitivity, that, you know, it's different for every single player that we have. There's nobody that's the same. But the one thing is, if you don't slow down in transition, which is what we talk about all the time, then you're going to have zero feel. Even a pro, a highest level pros, when they get to the, let me get this off here. When they get to the top of when they swing, when they make a normal speed, so if they're like this, they don't have very much feel either. You know, so it's a lot of it's natural ability, a lot of it's training and all this stuff, but they're really just turning back and turning through when you get to a 7-iron and a driver. So you can't build all, you have to kind of turn the mind off and just hit it. That's why we do so much training with like a little wedge going where you decel in zones 2 through 5, going, even if you're in the zone 5, training only hitting the ball 10 yards. And so it's not to hit the ball 10 yards, it's to decelerate, hit it. If you can hit the ball perfect, 10 yards on a zone 5, you've got a high level sense and feeling awareness. And it's not about it going straight. It's everything. It's the compression of the ball on the ball. It's the initial start line. It's the trajectory of the ball and the ball control. And if you got all those, you're in the ballpark. I can't say you're going to be playing best golf of your life. The odds are you will be, regardless of player. But you're on your way to feeling things and learning. So then, when you're making swing changes, the whole program's based on making swing changes with a wedge in your hands, making real small swings, so that when you turn it loose with a 7-iron and driver, all you're trying to do is turn back and turn through, essentially. That's it. You don't really have time to think of all this stuff, because you can't control, as much as we'd love to control the face, this stuff right here, and it's impossible. It really is. I mean, you can make even the alignment correct and all that, but if the club rolls or if it's held open a little too long at impact at the timing contact point, it's over. And the club's moving, you got to realize it's gradually picking up speed up to the timing contact point, up to this player 120 miles an hour with the driver. There's no way he can control it perfectly with his hands. I'm telling you, if you asked him what he would tell you, I have no idea, because he doesn't. And if he did, he probably wouldn't be on the tour. And those guys that are working with TrackMan, and I'm not trying to knock TrackMan here, but I am in a way. If TrackMan was as good as everybody thought it was, then Tiger Woods right now probably wouldn't be injured, and he'd have won 10 times last year, because he was the first guy to have TrackMan in his house and using it religiously and telling all the guys on the tour about how great it was. And because it's all about face control through impacts. Essentially, that's what it is, incline of plane and face control. And that means that you're hitting a ball, and every time you hit one, it pops up these numbers, 3.5, 5 degrees open or closed. And you start making these adjustments until you hit 0, 0, 0. till you get it where you want it, basically, the numbers you want for your relative to your plane. And so that means that you're just sitting there manipulating your hands every single shot, which is crazy. That has to come to you, and so that means that you're trying to go 120 miles an hour in controlled degrees versus just swinging back and swinging through. And so a player like Dustin Johnson, a good example while we're talking about this, Tiger was out for, I don't know, it was like 8 months, and it's going to sound like a Tiger bashing show, which it's not. I'm actually a big fan, but he was out for however long, 8 months, 9 months, whatever it was, and then he came back, and after his back surgery, and he came back. Well, Dustin Johnson was out too, same amount of time. And well, Dustin Johnson came back out and was winning in Florida the first few months, and because all he was doing was playing golf every day. He didn't have a swing coach. He wasn't going on TrackMan every day. He wasn't overtraining. He was just doing what athletes do when they're great at their sport. He was playing, and he trusted his ability. And the ones that like Tiger was doing was going out and trying to do the kind of like if you saw Rocky V, where it's the Russian training all these machines. He's trying to do all this gadget stuff, which is what the typical 90 or 100 shooter will do, and he had horrible results. I mean, you watched how he was chipping the ball. The guy even couldn't chip the ball at the first of the year. The best part of his game, and so that kind of goes with my philosophy. If you've heard me talk before, is like if you can't hit a little wedge, you're going to struggle in your swing. Well, there you go. He's shooting in the 80s, and he probably hadn't done that since he was a teenager. Well, maybe before that. But my point is with all this is like it's not the best machine you've got, and the best TrackMan you've got in the world is right between your ears. There's no computer on this planet that's smarter than the human brain. So you have to dial into you, and there will never be a machine that will be able. They've got machines now that can make you swing. It's robot machines where you hold on the golf club, and these people swing, and it makes you swing exactly like a robot. And they still can't hit the ball. And the reason why they can't hit the ball after all that training with the machine that hits swings like a pro or Iron Byron or whatever, is because the fact that you're not a machine. It's biomechanics. Now, the physics is different, but biomechanics is not. You're dealing with human. You're dealing with the laws of physics, but you're dealing with things that you wouldn't build a machine to have physical limitations. So if you're a mechanical engineer on here, if somebody's a mechanical engineer, they can relate with this. You never would build a machine that had limitations on it. It would be silly. But the human body is made full of limitations. Some of us are shorter, some of us are bigger, some of us are tighter, some of us are hypermobile. Some of us deal with a lot of fear. Some of us are very you're dealing with all these elements that you have to dial into you to find out and to fix. And that's going through a long story here. That's what the D cell is all about. It's all about I certainly believe in degrees, like the base needs to be this and that. No doubt about it. It's just the way to get there is radically different than what I've seen out there. And every great player, if you ask them questions, will tell you the same thing, which I've been fortunate enough to be around a lot of great players and ask them a lot of the same questions. How'd you grow up playing golf? And a lot of the players on the Champions Tour would tell you that they didn't really even have driving ranges growing up. All they did is play, and they'd have a putting green. They'd sit out there all day and chip and putt all day. And then the guys would come around, and they would say, all right, let's just hop along and play. And they play golf every single day. Now, the modern generation, what they'll tell you is they have all these driving ranges and all this stuff. But, they hit more balls. This generation would hit a few more balls, but it's not like you think. I have guys on that come to our program that hit 50 times the amount of balls that a lot of the PGA Tour players that I've met and been around. Now, they don't do the short game as much, like chipping and pitching and the putting. The pros don't putt as much as people think they do. There's some that do, like Luke Donald putts. He putts forever. BJ, believe it or not, even as bad as he putts for hours. But like they spend most of their time chipping and pitching and hitting 30 and 40 yard shots. And that's where I kind of came up with this, with our program is to help people not only be able to accomplish, because I'm a believer now, especially with the studies we've done, that, and I think a lot of players can vouch for this that are on here, that if you can't hit it 30 yards and you're shanking it and hitting it left and hooking it and flipping it and cutting it and hitting behind the ball and topping it, how are you going to hit a driver? I mean, how are you going to hit a 7-iron? And the thing is, you won't. And so what we got to do is we got to work up like the kids like kids do that became great players, and do it in the same steps, which is real slow, real short, and master those hands and that club face relationship, and then build your swing however you want to build it after that. And so the decel will help us do that. So as you get here and you decel and you're just saving it and saving it and saving it, when you've hit the ball, this is where in this area you would start to feel, most of the time for players, they would feel the club starting to flip up. As you see it on video, it would be up above the hands in the same position. The hands would be working that way, and the club would be working up. And that's the, no doubt about it, that's the most common. And so when you're doing the decel, you can start to feel like you can keep more torque because you're going slower. You can start to keep more torque and stabilize the face and do more things like the best players in the world can do. And that's where it all starts from. Because the goal at the end of the day is the same for all the players, in my opinion, on here. I believe, in my opinion, that to play your best golf, you have to turn back and turn through. And that sounds, when you do that, it's different for every player. But the goal is really, you got to let it go. When you get to a 7-iron driver, you can't be thinking like, oh, I'm going to try to get this in perfect alignment. I'm going to do all the 7 timing components and proper sequential motion and it's all these labels that labels go away. That's just to help you kind of go through the first training process, the first stage, and then the second stage is going out and putting it on the course by yourself or with some buddies, and then kind of the third stage of that would be to put it in competition, or every player I know is on here is doing different things, but for a competitive golfer that's really wanting to get into the 70s or be a club champion or more than that, it would be that process. The first stage is learning about you, which the decel helps with that, and then the private website helps with that. They're trying to work together. You have to study your swing, use the website to study and adjust, come back out and use video. So you hit that video pretty hard in that first stage until you start. And then the goal is to be able to feel all that. Let's say after the second month, you can start to feel it. You don't have to. When you video it, let's say the second month, you're starting to see what you're feeling. That won't be the case when you start. Okay, because video, feel and reel should be the same. They shouldn't be like, oh, when you look at your video, you go, man, I thought for sure I was doing that. Well, a great player, they still sometimes feel and reel are a little bit off with them a little bit, but not anything like an amateur. I mean, even a low 70s or a club champion, their feel is not the same as like a high-level athlete. That's like saying a high school basketball player that's one of the best in the state has the same kind of feel and awareness as LeBron James. It's just not going to happen. That's what you're trying to develop inside of all this. So as you're developing that, as you're studying and adjusting, you just come back and, like we talked, you just evolve and then try it all over again and have these little micro goals for the next day you're going to play or train or whatever it's going to be. Like, you know what, I'm tired of seeing that over-the-top move or that flip. I'm going to end that today. And you're going to have to probably exaggerate more than what you have been. Play that little cat and mouse game. Get as technical as you want at first, to try to eliminate it, but do it by decelerating and hitting it 10 yards. Don't go out with 7 irons and try to eliminate it there. Build that feel and awareness, so then when you do it enough reps and you get that touch, you not only have a really good short game, but you also have your long game is working together with that. So we'll go through this one more time, and then we'll open it up for some questions. So really all I'm looking for is, and again, every player is a little different. You could certainly come on here and say, hey, Matt, I saw somebody not doing what you said about the left arm. I agree. I'm not going to disagree. I know probably 50 players on the tour that don't do this, that are very good players. But the best ball strikers do this, and it gives you a mechanical advantage to keep that sweet spot in relationship inside the left arm. There is no doubt about it. The timing contact point trumps everything. I say that on the videos that start. I think it's video 1 and 2. It trumps all, and I'll always say that. Raw timing will trump everything. But I'm telling you, you get this better, and your golf game's going to start getting better. There's no doubt about it. We'll go off of here for a second. Let me just change this, and then we'll go. This is Jordan Spieth right here, so I'm just going to play this, and you'll see kind of what we're talking about. It's real slow motion. Oops. And all I want you to do is kind of watch what we're talking about with the same thing. So the club's going through its release right now. I don't know how many frames a second this is, but it's pretty high rate. There's timing contact point. It's a perfect example. It's a little bit different with every player. He's kind of a mid-flight player. That's why he's got a little more shaft lean. But you can see here now he's already you can see he's maintained that relationship already. He's got it stable. He's got it right there. And now he carries that forward. You can see that certainly he's got some rotation with his body right here. But really, what you're not, the mass is going forward, and that's confusing. And we may have to save that for another night because I don't want it to get too crazy here. But he's not trying to spin out and rotate like crazy. Whoops, sorry. It'll take a second. It's just frozen here. All right, there it goes. Now see, watch him. He's maintaining that the whole time. So you can see it never left that. Not a very good draw here, but that's about all we got. So that's exactly what we just talked about tonight, and that's where not every player does it, but that's what I would want all of our players to be trying to do is that, and you should do this in a short shot. You're going to see all these great players doing that. They sometimes, as the swing gets bigger, it's harder to do. That's why there's not as many that do that, but the best do that. So anyway, that kind of ends it on my presentation, and so I'm going to open it up for questions. So I'm sure there are some questions. So just fire away. Whoever wants to say something, just you can either text it in or chat it in, or just say what you got to say.
Matt, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, if you get the left arm straight with the club, you get that position. The right arm absolutely going to tuck in where it needs to be. I kind of have problems with not getting my right arm past the body, and so I'm wondering if you get the left arm straight, does the right arm automatically take care of itself?
Well, if the directional plane coming in, which we didn't really talk about, I know what you're talking about, but the directional plane, like what I mean by that, and I'll show you down the line here in a minute, like if this angle of attack was correct and this was right, then yeah, it's probably going to. Now it is muscular, so what you're talking about, you know, if you're I'm not sure if you're rolling that, are you rolling the elbow, is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about it's just getting short-armed, or what?
The elbow is kind of outside of the body instead of tucked in close to the body and a little bit ahead of the body like Dustin's is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so you're talking about space from the hip to the elbow?
Yes.
Down the line? Yeah, so, and it's different for every player. Again, that's another one you could go into. Some guys are more tucked. Some guys have more space. Like Tiger played his best golf with more space, and then Hogan played with it, and Jim Furyk, they just buried against their side until the club with Furyk, it's just buried against his side. So it's a little bit different. It's kind of getting into a style thing more than anything. Some of it has to do with how close you are to the ball as well. Some of because you think about it, if you're far away from it, like Mo Norman, you're not going to have the elbow. He couldn't glue his elbow like Hogan did. He'd whiff. So some of it does have to do with like the distance that you're standing, but the elbow position, you probably see it maybe change a little bit, but there's no doubt if you can get the alignment of the left arm, of the lead arm, that's going to make a bigger difference. Let me see if I can show him down the line here. I have to go to the next page.
Because basically the right elbow should be pointing more towards the target than pointing backwards, correct?
Well, I wouldn't really worry about, because like I could show you like Jim Furyk's. Like, let me pop you up his so you can just see just even the difference. Like, so you're talking about even like back in here, right? And then through. Yeah, so like that's all. Like, so if I just get a picture where his is right there, and then give me just a second. And here's Furyk, an old one. So here's the difference. This is why. See how radically different the elbow is, right? And that's really it, because I don't really ever. I deal more with the right wrist. So if the right wrist was casting out or rolling over, or the elbow was rolling out towards us, we'd have more of it. We'd have something to talk about. But with just the angle of it, it's really how you move, and it's what you're capable of doing, meaning your physical limitations, and it's a style thing. As long as it's not coming out and rolling out and over as the club's trying to hit, or the right wrist is rolling over or punching, trying to accelerate. So, does that make sense?
Yes.
And I can cover that. I got to do this follow-up video, so let me put that down. I can put that on the back elbow and just kind of give you a few demonstrations. But
Matt, does the grip make any difference?
So I'll tell you what the theory is on that, and this is I don't think so. Like, a lot of people would say like the style of the grip makes your body rotation different, and it can, but it really doesn't. I mean, it's just like, so if people say you have a stronger grip, right, then you're going to have more hold off, and you're like, so coming through the timing contact point and through. That's not true. I see like Dustin Johnson, even as close as he is, when he hits the ball, you'll see he's got roll after he, as it's coming through the timing contact point. Tom Watson had a whole lot of roll after he hit it. The club was really rolling over. Where I think where it started with strong grip was when people saw Trevino back in the day, and he kind of blocked it. And of course, then Paul Azinger kind of started saying that, and then you saw Ben Hogan that had a real weak grip, and he kind of had some more roll than through there. So your body doesn't have to spin out if you have a strong grip, and you don't have to stay kind of closed with your body if you have a neutral grip. But what will happen is if you did grip the club, if you're a neutral gripper, you grip the club neutrally, or say weak. And then you swing, all of a sudden you take a real strong grip, you'll feel your body naturally trying to open a little bit more. I don't know.
I was just experimenting with grip a little bit, and I think like a stronger one on my wedges seems to work quite nice, but whenever I get like up to a 5-iron, it just feels so comfortable.
Yeah, I would keep it the same for everything, regardless. Yeah. But the grip, it's one of those things. If the grip really did, as much as that's a big fundamental in golf. You'll hear a lot of the old books and everything talk about the grip. But the thing with grip is, like, as you've heard me talk about, it's such an individual. It just doesn't have that much effect. I mean, we want to make it have more effect than even somebody like me that's classically trained and done this my whole life. I want to believe the grip does more than it just doesn't. When you go out there and watch grip, J.B. Holmes grip the club. I remember the first time I saw him grip, it was the ugliest grip I ever saw, and he just slashes it down there 330 right down the middle. Guy makes a lot of money with a horrible grip. And you look at, and then I saw Tommy Two Gloves Gainey, which he's not a phenomenal player, but he played on the tour better than anybody on here that I know of. So. A horrible grip. I mean, ugliest grip you've ever seen. Mo Norman, ugly grip. If you're talking about, and I've seen grips oppose each other. I've seen them, really beautiful grips that can't play a lick. It just doesn't have that much. When I call the grip alignment point, the reason why I call that is because that's where I believe the grip truly is. As you hit the ball and the clubs went through, that's where the grip is. You can see he's got control of the face right here, right? It's that inside part right there. He's passed. For him, it's a little bit different from the grip alignment point, but that's the same thing. That's the grip. So Whereas amateurs, you know, that club's rolled right here and it's flipped up, and so they don't. That's why I called it the grip alignment point, because that's where the true grip controlling the face really is. If that makes sense. That's why I tell you to grip it. You know, a lot of videos up front will tell you to, you know, grip it on the lead hip and all that stuff, and just get used to it, because that's your best friend. You watch the pre-shot routine with most of the old players and some of the new ones as well. They grip it on their left hip. Their right foot will go in first. Their grip is in alignment with their lead hip, even though the left foot's way back. It's in front. It's not at the ball. It's in front. Then they put it behind the ball and all that. So that's why I call that the grip alignment point, because that's where I believe the grip really matters. You don't want separation or flipping and rolling and all that stuff at that point in the golf swing, or holding off either. Let's see, there's another question here. Take me just a second to find it. Okay, so there's a question on here about rooting the feet, kind of where they are in the weight distribution at the top, and so we'll go back up there again.
Did a video on that already.
All right, so as it gets to the top of the swing here, so right in here is where the float would start for him. He's slowing down and all that, and you can see he's just staying stable right here. And let me just get this. So right now he's gonna have that root in, you know, both areas. You probably saw it some of you may have saw that last public video about the big toe and the second toe. If you haven't, that's where the root is right there, and everything's so stable. Whereas in transition, what we would be seeing is more. Most players would either be trying to spin. Well, this is too big. Hang tight with me here. So most players would be trying to spin that weight around. So they'd be trying to spin it kind of in a reverse circle here, or they would be trying to drive it. They would also be leaning their head, you know, forward is very common, like all the time. So they'll lean out in front of it, and then they end up reverse spinning. You know, they kind of start spinning out of it. So as they move this forward, and they start spinning their hips this way, or they move out in front of it and they don't do anything. They just stay really stable, and then they just flip it really bad. And there's all kinds of different ways. But what you're trying to do here is create that root in that big toe and second toe on both right here, and let everything come to a pause. I mean, especially if you've been in a program for a long time, which some of you guys have, you know, and you've got this grooved in, yeah, well then, you know, it's different. But most people, the number one thing that I look at first stage is, can you stabilize your body and the club in transition? It starts there, because what we'll see is guys trying to do too many things, or trying to do the thing we just talked about tonight, or this or that. But the number one thing is literally just getting up, regardless in zone 5, and everything being stable for at least a couple seconds. Just getting it, both feet rooted here, not turning to the target, not reverse pivoting, not drifting away, and not allowing, which is number one, allowing the club to be bending down or cocking back this way. Either one of them are no good. We just want everything to be stable. And if you go back to, like I said, the law of the pendulum, just Google that, you'll see that there's a little pause right there as the ball goes back and goes up for demonstration, and before it comes down, there's a delay and a pause, and everything's stable, and then it comes down slow, and then it builds mass and momentum, and that's exactly how this guy right here swings. He does it as good as anybody, if not better. So yeah, and the weight's 50-50, but again, if you can root right here in both toes, you're going to have both. You're going to have the 50-50. From a measurement standpoint, is it exactly 50-50? I don't know. I've used all we had the velocity machine and the center of pressure of the feet, the individual stabilizing bars where you can tell like where the weight's at and all this, but like it's just more feel, you know. But you're not going to feel 90% of your weight on your right and then shift hard 90% of your weight on to your left, or feel all left in transition, which is like some of the other methods out there. They'll teach you to run left and then then you kind of stop and stabilize and all that. That's not the most efficient way. Most efficient way is to have both of those feet rooted and stabilized and the club stabilized, and then work slowly down and then gradually building momentum. Now in training, in a golf swing, a live golf swing, it would be slow and then it would go fast and momentum through. But in training, you just constantly train decel, so it's different, and so you can feel like the pressure of the feet and the club stabilize, and then of course the exit. That's just to feel all these parts come together, so you have to be your own best teacher, and you don't want to be dependent on. I don't care if it's me or if you go to Butch Harmon or you go whoever you want to go to. If you're dependent on your instructor, that's not how great players made it. Great players made it off being dependent on themselves, and that's what this whole program's about. But so that's why we do all the training and some of the other things like in the Tai Chi and so you can feel. You learn how to feel things. So when you're off, you can go in and say, all right, well, I know how to fix it. This is the type of training that will work and make it better. All right, let me see if we have another question here. We don't have any more on chat. If you got any more questions, just let me know.
Hey Matt, this is John in North Carolina. First of all, thanks for this great instruction.
No problem, John. Thanks.
And I notice whenever I'm hitting balls into my practice net in the garage that occasionally I'll hit one just right of the target quite a bit, almost miss the net.
Okay.
And I've been trying to analyze what's happening there, and it seems like when I get to the ball with the face is just pointed in that direction, am I just not turning enough, or am I just not moving? Am I not releasing my hands enough? What do you think is happening there?
Okay, so one question I have is: are you hitting it in the sweet spot or on the toe, or are you hitting it in the heel? Are you hitting?
No, I'm making decent contact. It's just going dead right.
Gotcha. So let me go down the line with this because it'll make more sense, and it'll make more sense too whenever I demonstrate that tomorrow, what can cause that. When I do the video, but I'll do my best to show you. The bad thing about pros, the bad thing is they don't do things wrong, so it doesn't show always kind of what's going on here. So I'll just use Zach Johnson. They're all the same when they really come in through, but as he's coming in, the odds are that the club is behind the hand. It's not like it's going right. And so you're doing a good job, like we talk about with that. The club's behind the hands as it's going in to get released. And so what's happening though is, I believe, is that the club. Let me get my tool out here. The club is going linear, which is that way.
That's right.
That makes sense. So it's just getting
right.
driven. And so what happens is it's getting driven off plane out there. And this is where if you decel more, and I know I always refer to it, there's a reason, but if you'll decel more in your wedge training, what'll happen is you'll pick up on this movement that's linear, that the club's kind of pushing and driving off plane. And so what you need to do is kind of slow the pressure is going too hard this way, not only with the sweet spot but with the hands. And so what you have to do is allow erase that and start over. You've got, if he just stopped and just kept driving this way, he would do the same thing. But what he does is he allows the club, I got to take my pointer on here first, he allows the club to get, it's working, you can see, down into the ball, and then it'll end up going left through here. So again, in a driver it'd be impossible really for you to feel that if you're driving off plane. But you got to get, if you slow down enough as the club's delivered, that's a little bit too far inside, but delivered this way, then you've got to be able to, if you're in touch with sweet spot in your body, then you know that you've got to get those both connected out of that, right? And that's easier. I mean, that's hard for me. It's hard for me to get on here and tell you because you're talking about how the club's releasing. You're talking about the club's being driven, like off plane.
Yep.
But I will tell you that if you decelerate more, you'll tap into what it's doing. And that's the first thing that I would tell you. It's not that the decel about just slowing down, that doesn't fix anything. The decel will finally you'll feel it happen, like where it comes from, and it's different for every player. If the right hand's pushing, the left hand's dragging, or both of them are moving forward too much, or the body's leaning too far forward, that can cause it sliding and running closed down the line. You'll start to feel like why it's not getting released and turning back to the left. And then so what you do, you would just keep training slow. You find it, and then you start training slow and trying to get your sweet spot in touch with your whole body. So as it's being delivered into the timing contact point, then you catch what we call catch it. You catch it and move it back out the exit side. And it'll make more sense. I'll try to make it's hard for me to do it without demonstrating. If I was demonstrating, everybody in here would go, I got it. Aha. But
Very good.
I'll do that video. That's a tricky one, but I'll certainly show you what I see, what I believe is causing that, and then what the correction of it would be, and what to try to tap into.
Very good.
All
Thanks,
right?
Matt.
Yeah, no problem.
Matt,
Yes.
I was just wondering, like, when you're playing different shape shots, like draw and stuff, like how do you play, like with your hands and stuff? Do the hands play quite a part in it?
Not as much as you think. It's kind of you mean if you're trying to play a draw like on a dog leg, or are you talking about if you just naturally hit a draw?
My shape, I can get pretty dead straight. I can draw it.
Right.
And but my natural hands want to sort of almost hold it off. I think it feels like like to hold it off, and anything more rotating would be a draw, I guess.
Yes, really, even like so. If I go back and I'll show, I think this is important because Dustin hits a draw, he can hit a cut, and he hit straight, he can hit all three. But I'll show you what happens a lot of times as you go through, as you hit the ball here and you move forward. You can see that his left hand, you can't see his glove, so you can tell he's rotated because it's simple, like he's there, right? He's hit impact, and then the club's rotating. But what's important here, more than anything to me, is that it has not. As he's rotated, which is what amateurs would do, is they might rotate that hand, but then they break the club. They break the club up too high, right? So they flip it off. They're rolling it and flipping it. So the hands would actually kind of, for an amateur, when they try to stop, they'll try to stop the handle here and then roll the face, and it creates the club face going up too high in through the same position. That'll happen, and what that means is they hit the timing contact point. They'll typically do it too. That would mean that they do it here. They roll the face, and if you roll the face right there as you hit the ball, it's going to be a duck hook. And so, it's such a fine line, like on hitting and it just depends, like if you're trying to like a recovery hook, if you're hitting like a recovery, hook out of the trees and so forth, you're going to have some superficial arm rotation and all that, but you still can't hit hit the ball really with you still have to hit it somewhat square or slightly close, and then it's kind of radical because you get the masse on the ball, on the club to the ball to club relationship. But like even here, like he's probably hit maybe that's it's hard to say, but it's good a chance that ball may have drawn maybe a yard, and it's but it's because it's turned, but he kept that alignment. And I think that's the most important thing. If you're trying to hit a draw, that you maintain, you don't stop the handle of the club and flip the head over, because under pressure to happen too fast, and then you'll hit a big flip hook.
I normally play to like a straight, or like a cut is quite good, but if I'm just thinking for like distance, really, like.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with that. Yeah, you don't want to mess with all that. That's just you get in over your head. You hit it far enough. One, I know you're swinging all that, but I wouldn't mess with all that. But you don't want. You just it's different for every player. The plane of the swing for a draw is definitely different than a fade. But really, how you keep this alignment with the left arm should be the same. Whether you're hitting neutral or whether you're hitting a draw or a fade. But if a player's trying to hit a draw, they certainly try to feel a slight bit more underplane, and I don't mean by trying to fake drop it and all that stuff. It's really actually through how they cool up in transition, how they cool and come out of that, and that's very, very, very advanced. And I'll probably never do a video on that because it's hard to. It's like you just got to do it, right? And there's people that do it. You just, I don't know. It's hard. That's a hard one to kind of go into doing it. But I wouldn't go into like trying to think about the hands a whole lot, like them changing and all that. You just try to keep that alignment with the lead arm. That's for sure. If your lead hand or your right hand are rolling a little bit, as long as you're keeping that alignment with the lead arm, that's a good thing. But just make sure one of the I think the big thing that you got to be careful with as we're talking about this is that a lot of times people think that this is what I'm talking about. Like they're trying to get the lead hand here and the shaft back and this big block move, and that's the last thing in the world I'm talking about. That's as bad as a flip. What you're really just trying to do is get it right there. So. But there's some videos online about recovery shots and all that. And, recovery shots different. You aim your body at where you want the ball to start, and you aim your club face where you want the ball to end. And that's good because there's a lot of cool shots on there on the recovery game. We'll be adding more to that over the winter and so forth. Because it is different on a recovery shot versus just say a 5 to 10 yard draw, like you're trying to play when a dog leg left, like when the players get ready for Augusta. A lot of the players will start to add a little more draw into their driver swing, and they typically start to try to fade their irons a little bit more. So stop it on those underneath the hole and on those fast greens. So let's see. Let's see, there was a question, why does the ball flight, why does it get hot? Well, really, what happens is the face, as it's at the time and contact point, it's working in a progression that's, give me a second here. So as he's hit here, we know that he's got what we call, in the industry, call it shaft lean, call it whatever you want, but he's got forward shaft lean right there, and that's going to, you can just see the flexion of the shaft is going to, with a square face, obviously has that ball is going to just launch out nice and be right optimal. What happens is that line with an amateur is, as we know, well, not everybody knows, but like if you look at, and you need to look at your video, but your hands would be more in line with your zipper or your right leg here, and the club head would be here. And that would that makes the face and the launch, you always call it, it's just like pole vaulting, so the bend point of that line would be like that, right, which would be too high. So it's like if you're a pole vaulter and you plant right here in the angle of your pole, if you plant too far back, you're going to launch too high. If you plant, you get it up, if you get it really upright, then your plane of launch won't be high enough. Biomechanics of pole vaulting. And trust me, it's important to know. That's why you want your plane to be like this and not kind of like that. So the club would be, if the club's casting out here, it works down and then it works up. That means as it's working up this way, there's your launch. So it's not, and it's not just going like straight down like that. That's not what you want to do. That's where we talk about landing the airplane. I've got a video on that somewhere on there, but it's like the angle. Oops. The angle of delivery would be coming in like this. It flattens out and then it starts to go like this. See, whereas an amateur, well, a lot of times will go just straight down, right, and then right at the last second they raise the club head up, and that those two things will impact it. How you're delivering the club, there's no doubt. The angle that you're delivering the club on, obviously, but the number one thing is you've made contact. You can see his. If you just look at the pressure of the shaft is at that angle, and so the energy of the shaft is there. Whereas an amateur, at that same point, the energy of the shaft would be there, which would, let's just go up. The energy shaft would be working like that. Does that make sense to everybody? Because if it doesn't, I'm going to definitely do it. It's a good question, and I'll do that tomorrow, a video on that as well, or add that into the video. But does that make sense, what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Because this front side of the shaft is stable, right? It's got pressure on the front side, and I'm not saying he's trying to force pressure. It's just by doing doing the right stuff, having all containment. This front side of the shaft, the back side of the shaft is really kind of negative, right? And so what happens is on an amateur, of course, it looks a lot different. Their shaft would be like that. Their hands would be right here, and their head would be right there. So the back side of their shaft, right over here, would be what's having force applied to it. All right. So the back side of the shaft has force applied to it, and then so what happens is that's where you take the middle point, and that's where you're going to have the launch, which is way too high. If I do this again, you can see, and you just have to use your eyes. Let me back up a frame or two so you can see this, so you can just see it first, because it's important to see what I was talking about. You can see the delivery of the plane and the ball. You can see right here. So it's really technical, but I do think it's important, or I wouldn't show you. The pressure is in the middle of the shaft, and it's working on that angle. It's obviously changing every frame I change this, it's going to change. So as it moves forward, but here's a really good one. You can see as it's coming in through the release. This front side of the shaft is loaded. I'm telling you, and it's working on that plane right there, downward. All right. It's going to change again and start to level out, like landing the airplane. The next one, it's going to start to land out. It's starting to level, but it's still downward pressure. So it's still like working like that right there, somewhere in there. This is the sweet spot will work along this flat line like that, but you'll see. So it's still down. And you can see the ball. I never even paid attention to where its golf ball is, but that's where it is, and that's why it's that launch. So if we I'll try to go back here. I'll leave that there if I can.
Hey Matt, well, what's interesting there with that shot as he's hitting that ball? Look at his head. Look where he's looking. Where are his eyes
It's all style.
looking right now? According to his cap, it looks like he's looking ahead.
Yeah. So, and it's all style based, right? So, if you look at what's most important here, and we'll go into that, is like his head is staying in the same spot. Like this can swivel all at once, hold back, turn it the other. Like Tiger Woods, in his heyday, he had it turning the other way. And then some guys, it has to do with eye dominance. If you want to get to the bottom line, it's eye dominance. And it's also style. Some guys just like to open up their head, but it's not something you'd ever try to do. And that's for sure. But the most important, it wouldn't have anything to do with going high or low or being great. I mean, I've seen guys that open their head that can't break 150, and I've seen Henrik Stenson, Dustin Johnson, and Annika that open their head and hit it great. So you can hold it back and hit it bad, and you can open it up and hit it bad. So that's why I don't really talk about it. Now the angle of where it's at, or the being able to, it can't be, you don't want that in front of the ball or way behind the ball, because that makes it harder on for your arms. So the further your head is behind the ball, the longer your arms better be. Or you're going to be in big trouble. Your arms are going to be too short by the time they reach the ball, and you create a flip. If they're in front, they get too long, so then you flip it to get it up in the air. So kind of a different thing, but the main thing is on this one is going to be this right here. So you got that right there.
Do you
Got
think,
pressure.
is he quite dominant with his left hand? His like grip?
No, not really. I mean, it's just like so. So right here as he hits, you know, all the players have, you know, even if you watch Jordan or any of the great players, they hit, you know, in the time of contact point with the little, where the back side or the front side of the shaft is got pressure on it, which is going to be in the lead hand, and then it's going to pass, and then it's neutral here. And that's why they don't hit. Whereas an amateur, but it goes back to everything we're saying. The only reason you don't want to get caught up in like all the little things too much, because you know you'll start going out there and trying to. Guys will start, you know, tomorrow they'll take their driver out and try to pressurize the left hand, and they block it 5 miles and flip it to the left woods the next hole and play that cat and mouse game. It's got, your hands have to be what we call automatic. They just have to be automatic. If they don't have to be, you just won't play as good. If they're automatic, you will play your best golf, and that's why we do so much on the wedges. This just has to naturally happen. You can control it more in your wedge play, and that's why we do it there in short wedges and mid-range wedges and so forth. But your hand, what you're trying to do is, as you hit the ball, the pressure would be neutral in both hands, and that's truly, you know, neutral hands. If he was to try to block the club, hold the club off here, he would have too much pressure in his left hand. If he stopped the club and flipped it, which is what just about everybody does, is he would have too much pressure in his right hand, and it would affect again what we're talking about, the back side of the shaft, pre-impact and post-impact. So, but if you look, when you look at your video, you'll see that everybody's club release is like this, down towards the ball, right? I mean, everybody's does. And so that's why, I mean, now it might be releasing from back here, which is probably what's going on, obviously. But everybody's shafts, it's going to release, I can assure you that. But watch where the alignment of the hands are at the timing contact point and then the grip alignment point. And that's where you're going to see the difference with the pros and why you do the D-cell training. And the D-cell training, if you watch that video, I don't go past this spot right here, even when I'm in zone 5. And that's so, it's to build feel and awareness. And it's also to build torque into the downswing, because once you've accelerated and you hit the gas, so to speak, especially if it's forced, you won't get it back. You know, if you flip the right hand early, right in transition, once you, like, so if I go all the way back here and I hit the gas and lean out in front of it, you're not going to all of a sudden stop, slow down, and get your angle back and all that before you hit the ball. There's no way. And so we know that. That's why once you go fast in transition, it's over. It is over for an amateur, and it's over for a pro. They know it. You'll hear it. Very few things a pro will ever agree on in their golf swing, because they're all so different. But I remember hearing it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I was watching this segment on Golf Channel, which I don't really watch hardly in the Golf Channel, but I do whenever you got a PGA Tour player talking about swing. I always like to listen, because there's nobody that knows more about it than they do, and because they did it and lived it under the highest level of pressure. I mean, they are truly the masters of it. Now, a lot of them don't teach because they don't like to teach. They don't like talking to people. I could give you some funny stories on some of the guys I work with on the tour trying to teach, and they just don't. It's not because they can't teach. It's because when people don't listen to them, it drives them batshit crazy. Because you're talking to people that have won millions of dollars, and you'll still get amateurs out there that can't break 90 that are going, you really think I'm doing that? You really think that's the right thing to do? So it's pretty comical. And so that's why you don't see them teaching a lot. But it was Raymond Floyd, Greg Norman, and Nick Faldo. And one thing that they all three said was, when they get fast in transition, bad things happen. That's the only thing they all said. Everything was different. Like, every one of their lessons was different. Like, they were talking about this, like Faldo was talking about the fall through, and Norman, I can't remember, and Floyd's actually whole segment was on being slow in transition. He goes, that was like his segment. But they all talked about it. Nick Faldo even talked about it. Well, like, bad things happen here. Norman talked about it. That's the one thing that they know when they get fast in transition, bad things happen. Whether you cock the club down and down cock it really hard, or get accelerated away, or the body's moving forward in transition, or it's over rotating in transition, whatever it's doing, that slowing down in transition. And I thought was interesting, all three of them said the same thing, is their favorite drill was the pause drill, where they just take it up the top and pause. And that's just because they could feel that they were finally stable for a split second, and that they could come down in one unit into the ball. And that's the bottom line. And that's where, I didn't come up with the float through that. I mean, I knew that for a lot longer than I'd heard it. But I just think it's important when everything they said you could take, in my opinion, 98% of it, I mean, it was all true. But it was all style-based. Like, they were telling you what they liked in the style of their swing. The only thing that I thought that where you could take it universal was nobody on the tour wants to be fast in transition. There's not anybody. But amateurs are faster than anybody. So and it all starts right there in that transition zone, the speed of it. Doesn't mean you're going to be a great player. You can be slow in transition, hit it like crap. Don't get me wrong. But that's where the learning comes from. Is you get slow in transition, you learn how to contain torque, you learn how to get the timing contact point and maintain alignment, and you get really freaking good at it. And then you turn the brain off and just let it go. That's really the process of this.
Yeah, I think I've been trying to think up and just get it a bit better, because it's funny, like, when you watch people now, because I see it down the driving range, like, kid hitting it, as far as he can, dead straight, and then the next one will be miles offline.
Yeah.
It's so, like, violent.
Yeah, typically, it's, just, well, you hear a lot of pros talk about, most amateurs in the hit are really lucky, because the club's released early and their bodies are out in such bad position. So when they hit a solid one, it's really a lot of luck. And I believe there's some merit to that. But just not knowing what you're trying to do, not knowing what you're supposed to do, I think is the number one thing. They just don't know, and so they're working on 10,000 different things in their golf swing, and they they watch all the videos and read all the articles, and it just becomes this mess. And then they'll run into articles that contradict each other and videos that contradict each other. And so they have these roads that are all over the place, like trying to go up to the top of a mountain when there's a straight road to get there, the easiest one, and you got 10,000 other ways, and they all stay on the first level, and because they're depending on other people, and they're getting different information, and they're not really tapping into being an athlete, going and figuring it out. And that's what this program is based on, kind of both. There's a technical side to it. It's a narrow road, and it won't really get wide, and it'll take you there. But it's not just technique, as we've talked about. It's not just technique. That's important to know.
I was watching Steve Elkington, and his tempo is very nice. Like, it's nice, and it's about like consistency, I guess. Like, I mean, I don't know about other people on it, but I know I hit it further enough. It's just about trying to guide it in.
You said you hit it further now?
Yeah, I hit it further, but it's just trying to dial it in so it's just the same every time now.
Yeah.
More than sort of trying to hit it as hard and as far.
Yeah, that's pretty common that guys are hitting it further. I mean, I think most of the guys that train on here know that they hit it further. It's the accuracy. I know your accuracy's really improved and so forth, but it's you get when you start to decel and transition, you don't think about it, but you start to take advantage of mass and momentum, and you can start to use your body against the ball. You can't do that when your body's if your body's up here and it's moving out in front. All the mass gets left too early. The club's is way over here going, hey man, you're disconnected, 7 feet away from each other. I'm lost. I have no idea what's going on. Or if you spin, same way, and so there's too much disconnect. So, that's where, when guys decel in transition, it's just, even if they get 1% better, that's all. You're going to feel different. You're going to hit it better. You're going to hit it further because you're going to start taking advantage of using mass like he does, which is not running out in front of it. It's just, he's in transition, and the body's moving at the same rate as the sweet spot's moving. They're working together. And then they come together at one, and then they move forward again. So it's like, and I know that's hard to talk about. A lot of my last video webinar, the follow-up, I talked about that, the communication wire and all that, but it's just getting all this together. And so what happens is a lot of times when people see this, they'll think, look, he's really opening up his hips, and the reason why his hips look closer to the target than his golf ball right here, or to the target than his sweet spot, is because his club's 7 feet away from the ball. I mean, his club's way behind his body. And I'm not talking about positionally and all that. I'm just talking about just naturally. I mean, the club's, look how far it is away from. So yeah, it's swinging behind, but the rate of movement that he's coming through, I'm telling you, is all connected together. And that's, if you look at an amateur, it does not look like that. The body's really spun out, or it just completely stops, and the club goes and flips, obviously, way back in this area. And that's why, if you slow down and transition, come to a stop, I would recommend anybody that's a new player on here stopping in transition. Just stop. It'll be the first time in your life you've ever been stable in your life in transition, and that's a mechanical advantage. Doesn't mean you're going to you'll hit it better, but you can also hit it bad. But the point of it is to learn. So when you get stable here, then if you jump in front, or if you snap your hips, or if you cast your right hand and you cast the club, you can feel it. You know, if you come over the top of it, you can feel it. If you drop under plane, you can feel it. That's how you learn. So like we're taught, you know, feeling is understanding. So you can feel it, you can understand it. So see, what are the questions we got here? Yeah, so important is flat wrist at the top? Not really. I mean, you take the history of the game. How important is the left, you know, basically the lead wrist as being flat at the top of the swing? It's you know, if you're doing what we do in the float, it certainly forms out like that. It just because it's a gradual move. But you know, like Hogan played with a cupped wrist. You know, Freddie Couples, two great ball strikers. So they play with cupped wrist. You know, where there's a lot of cup at the top of the swing, and that's the reason why I don't get into like trying to talk about like getting it flat at the top and all this, because it's just the top. Most people can't even slow down. The most important thing at the top is slowing down. Slow that damn thing down. Slow your body. Stop your body and stop the club for 2 seconds for sure. That's more important than anything, because then what you learn in the float is we talk about slowdown effect, and then the second component is the wrist will side bend slightly, and it's not one snapping move. So when people try to flatten their wrist, when they're taught that or they hear about that, what they'll do is, as amateur golfers, will do everything in one movement. So they'll snap that wrist at the top. They'll really try to flatten it as one move, and then they'll try to hang on to that through the ball, and it just doesn't work. Because it becomes more dominant than the natural motion. It blocks the chi in the swing, does all kinds of different things. So that's why it's not really that important, and it's why I certainly don't talk about it. The wrists go through a pretty different range of motion, and that's what's found. And so the side bending of the wrist, that's what's measured in biomechanics, and that's what happens. And so some of them do it later, and some of them do it early, but they definitely do it. And you know, so their wrists aren't in a vertical position; they're in a side bent position, and that's the second part of the float. First thing is to slow down, and then the wrist just kind of you got to think frame by frame, and I don't mean video frames, but just kind of they're inchworming themselves flatter or in flatter side bending as the club is in transition, and it's part of that slowdown effect. And so on the downswing is where you're going to hear everybody, all the biomechanics labs and all that stuff. You're going to start to talk about that side bending, but it happens. It can happen in some of the downswing. It can certainly happen in the float too. But you won't have to worry about that if you've studied the float that we talked about. But that's why I used to have a lot of the old guys on here that have been training with me for a long time. They know that I used to have all that as one unit, like I had, you know, the four components of, you know, so it was like the slow down, the legs, this and that, and then I just said, oh man, you know, it was becoming like everybody else, even though it was all right, and you had a lot of success with it. When I cut it out and just said, look, let's just slow the thing down, get it stable, that's when, like, I mean, you're talking, I get it, I mean, if you get 10 people starting up per week, I'm going to say 8 send emails about how much success that they're having. And it's because we simplified the equation. Eventually we're going to get all 4, but we're just not trying to rush it. You know, it's no rush. Just get the thing slow, get stable in transition, because enough guys have problems with that. And then we can start to talk more about getting rooted, and then we can start talking about containment, and then we can start to do like the alignment. Is there a section in online training covers the driver? And yes, everything you're doing is covering everything. 7-iron driver. I mean, so when you're training with a wedge, and you can master the wedge scale, you're gonna be fine with your driver and your 7-iron and all that, because there's no such thing like a swing is a swing and a club is a club. So if you master your wedge and you get it to where you, and I say master it, from 10 to 100 yards or 10 to 80, whatever your limitations will allow you, because it doesn't have to be 100, maybe 80. You're not have a problem driving the ball, and you're not have a problem hitting 7-irons and all that stuff. Because there's no such thing as really like, even though the hand-to-eye relationship changes with the driver, everybody has that relationship. It's just they can't do it because their body's in such bad positions, and so they can't use their natural instincts of adjusting to a ball being on a tee. But there's not, like, if you talk to a pro, they're not changing anything on a drive. They're not trying to hit, if they're working with TrackMan and they're trying to change their numbers a little bit, they might work a little more. But they're not really they're not changing their swing. They're not changing their downswing. So this swing we're teaching is optimal for every swing. And I think that's really important to know, and I think it's a good question. The one thing I do talk about is landing the airplane with a driver, and I think it's the same with a wedge, really. But I think that's a good analogy. Sometimes with a driver, the players are so steep, their spin rates get really high, their launch gets really high or really low, ending, and they put so much masse on the ball that they have, dead pools and flip hooks and all that stuff. But it's, they do the same thing in their wedge. They just don't get penalized for it. So, but yeah, I mean, everything. I haven't seen anybody yet that and I've seen guys hit their wedge okay and not be hitting their driver where they need to be. But I have not seen anybody that mastered their sand wedge and that's all of a sudden they can't hit their fairways. I haven't seen it. But there's a difference in what I consider mastering something versus like what most people. I've seen guys that hit it straight and they're clacking it and they don't realize that their compression's about they're 60% or 6 out of 10 scale. It's measurement mainly. You just kind of have to know the audio and what the sound is, but either that or that they're hitting pretty good. They're hitting great compression, but they're missing their target on a 50-yard shot by 10 yards, and they think that they're really good at it. And neither one of those are any good because that's going to scale up. The harder you go at it, that 10 yards offline is going to turn into now 60 yards offline by the time you get to a driver. So your misses should be very, very, very small. From a 20-yard shot, they shouldn't be more than a few feet offline. 50-yard shot, if you're doing it around 10 feet max. And I know that sounds extreme, but it's really not. You'll get there. It won't get there in one day, but that should be your goal. You should be missing very small. Would be the goal. One of the questions was, what is it about maintaining alignment? What does that mean? Let's see. So maintaining alignment is two things. So one would be this: the timing contact point. The alignment of the shaft when you're looking at your video. You'd be looking at that's an alignment, and then you've got the grip alignment point, which this is it's one frame too fast, but it's the same thing. That's an alignment. It's all in alignment, and then as it exits through, it's inside the arm here. That's the alignments I'm talking about. And you also have body alignments, which I'm not going to talk about tonight. Too complicated. Just get the club relationship good. And if it's body alignments and they're way off, I think it was Mike that might have asked that. I know you train on the live sessions and all that. That's a little bit different. If you train live, your body session, the body parts are easy, from my opinion, to get in alignment. It's that club like we had today, like where you worked on it. And I know, Mike, you nailed this, really good today. So that was awesome, considering it was opposite of that angle when we started, and then I don't know, it was 30 minutes later, and you had it running up inside the left arm or the lead arm. That's the alignment that I'm talking about, though. Okay. It'll take me a minute. Yeah, no problem. And Mike, I know we did talk a little bit about the body roll today, though, that rolling components with the shoulder, but you did a good job again with that too. That's a tricky move because I didn't do like I said I was going to do on our last webinar. I said I was going to do because I went back and listened to the webinar and I realized I didn't make a video on the rolling movement, and I think that's really important. I'm going to put that in my notes because the rolling movements they're certainly part of the body alignments. They're not everything, but they're like those can destroy. I mean, you can be 2 inches from the ball or an inch from the ball, and any roll movement, whether it's normally if you got it there, you're good to go. But like a right hand roll movement, even 2 inches prior to hitting the ball, and the ball it'll be a miss hit. You know, it won't, not necessarily miss hit. It won't be on target. And so those are roll movements that will cause that. And it can be all basically. Most of those are going to be on the right side, the ones I talk about, and it's just important to understand for training. Let's see. If I missed anybody's question, just yell at me on here. I'm trying to look through the chat. There's a lot of questions, so I think I got most of it. One of the questions was if you have a high launch because of a steep downward motion, basically steep plane into the ball and not necessarily flip. Basically, so you can have, when you're coming down this plane, the angle of attack, basically, if it's steep, you can still hit it low because your hands can continue to drag and push forward, and you know, and you can still hit it low. Most of the time you're going to see it hit it high, though. If you're steep, the club comes down and then it exits up fast and it's kind of kicking backwards. But it's mostly what I'm talking about. It's the angle of the shaft at the timing contact point, and then what it's doing. Because we're just talking about positions, which is obviously, if you've heard me talk, it's not my favorite. You have to create labels. There's no doubt about it. But the club's moving in through. It's a constant movement. There's no stop on the downswing. There is no stopping or anything like that. So when it hits the timing contact point here, this is hard to explain. I'll maybe try to explain this tomorrow on the video. But like, you don't really know. Even here, if you just saw this, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a great shot. It's better than what most people do. But he could be. You don't know if he's going to continue to drive pressure that way, or if he's going to do what he does, which is not squaring about rolling the wrist or anything like that, but with his body, his pivot and his alignment, he just changes that as he's hitting the ball onto the plane on the exit side, and he continues to maintain that. So I guess that's what it's really tricky, but he could come in here and then all of a sudden he could be like this at impact, and then he could be leaning it, and then next thing you know, the handle stops. The handle goes this way and then flips it right at the ball, and then that would change it. It would roll back up and over the face, and I've seen that. It's crazy, you know. It's a crazy thing, but it's the rate of movement of what's happening. It's the intent of the player, which you can't do. You certainly can't do that by frame. You don't know. But I've seen where players lean the shaft forward, and right as they hit the ball, they run it backwards, and it's not like they're trying. You know, a flop shot's a good example of doing that, where you hit it in a straight line and then you lay the shaft back, or lay the shaft backwards, and it runs back over the face. Most of the time, that's just going backwards the whole way. So on the downswing, it's casting, which makes it easy to spot. You know, it's usually easy. So I'm talking about a little bit more complex, but there's a lot of ways to, you know, steep doesn't necessarily mean high. That's for sure. But most of the time it will be. And most of the time the amateurs will cast it while they're steep. They'll stop their body, and then they'll lay the shaft backwards, and then, you know, that makes the clip face it would change the loft and add more loft, which is a no-go. Any more questions? All right, so what we'll do is I'll get to work tomorrow, and we'll come up with a follow-up video just like we do for the last one, and I've got some questions on here that I'll answer, and then should be a good one. But anyway, guys, I really appreciate you guys just hanging in there and listening to all this stuff tonight.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, you guys have a great week. I'll see you in 2 weeks.